All right, me. It is the middle of July, and it's been a while since I've read because I've been moving. But today, in one sitting, I've just finished Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Um, Initially published in, I think, 1970. Judy Blume is a fantastic kind of like early kind of pre-teen to teen writer. She does really phenomenal with it. I bring up 1970 specifically because this is a redesigned book cover and it's meant to be in text messages. And I hate this. I think this is a terrible way to do this. And I guess really it comes down to like, I feel like there's a natural lack of intimacy within texting. And maybe it's because I'm on this kind of generational kind of threshold, right? But to me, texting is, right, it's informal in a good way, but it's also informal to the point of where this sort of thing of what this book is about, right, which is the issues of growing up and trying to figure things out and figure yourself out in a world of change, right? And all of this, right? To me, that the text messages doesn't fit that what's happening there, right? Especially when a huge part of the book comes down to these written postcards or written letters in some way, or phone calls, right? Which to me is way more of an intimate setting rather than text messages, right? Because I feel like both for phone calls at this point, as well as for physical media, right, letters or postcards and things like that, right, that feels like it is someone going out of their way to then talk with you or you know, convene with you in some way, right? Versus text messaging, which is such an immediate focus, right? It doesn't feel the same way to me. Anyways, that's Josh being old. But the book itself, right? I've always been a fan of getting people to read books that make you uncomfortable, and this is one of those books that makes me uncomfortable without it actually meaning to do so, right? And a lot of it, I think, just comes down to the fact that, like, because this is sort of the experience that I never had, right? Because, right, puberty when you're someone who's biologically male and puberty when you're someone who's biologically female is two massively different experiences, right? Because, right, as a biological male, right, and even though I hit puberty very, very quickly at a very young age, there was never an issue that is presented here with the girls, right? It is an issue. It became just an issue of, oh, I was just so much bigger and taller than everyone, and I was so domineering over everyone, right? Versus, right, the very noticeable physical changes and the prepping that has to occur for these young girls and the transition into puberty, right? Which is very, very different thing, right? Because it's also this huge thing of, right, the social stigma of being normal, right? Of fitting into the world as we see it, right? And it's this constant fear that Margaret kind of expresses of where she is kind of glad in a way, and she doesn't necessarily really express it very well, but she's glad that she isn't Lauren, right? Because Lauren is the one girl who has already become fully developed, right? She has hit puberty at an early age and is much more developed and much more along in that process than any of her peers, right? And it clearly makes Lauren very uncomfortable, right? Because it gets her a lot of unwanted and not needed attention, right? Because, right, as we're at that age of kind of 5th, 6th, 7th grade, right, it's a huge point in change in things, right? And that's what everyone focuses on. And so for her, being the most along in that process is very, very isolating, right? And throw it onto it, right, you have this young male teacher who is clearly uncomfortable with this, right, and doesn't really know how to address it, and all of that's going along with it, right? The very difficult kind of thing. So really, I feel very bad for Lauren, right? Because even though, right, it says in the book that Lauren, started puberty in like 4th grade, or so started wearing bras in 4th grade, right? I think I hit puberty right around that time. I think I may have been in 3rd grade when I really started like growing. And it feels weird to be that separated from your classmates, right? In that way of just being so much more physically developed than everyone else around you. But also, going along with it, Margaret then also expresses a lot of fear and about being the last in this group of girls to get her period, right? And feels very bad for, I think it's Janie, that is the one that doesn't have hers yet, right? And it's just an issue of like, right, this feeling of wanting to be normal, right? Of wanting to just exist without having to feel different than anyone else, right? Which is a huge fear, right? Especially when it comes into what I consider really that 6th to really 10th, 11th grade feeling, right? And sometimes, it even extends into adulthood, right? Of that feeling of wanting to just fit in and be considered normal in the world, right? So all of that's happening, right? Margaret's also experiencing this move from city to suburb, right, in the 1970s. And the first person that she meets is Nancy, and Nancy is this person who is so, is a young girl that is so obsessed with growing up, right? It really just doesn't think about anything else or portray anything else besides this feeling of wanting to be grown up and wanting to be, getting to that point, right? And it's really one of those things, right, of where, it's an obsession that I think is very, very, very readily easily seen, right? And it's an obsession that I think has gone to the point of where it is a marketable obsession now, right? Right, these feelings that Nancy has of really, really wanting her period, of really, really wanting to grow up, of really, really wanting to, what, as they phrase it, increase her bust size, is something that is really readily availably seen younger and younger, right? And I think part of that comes down to, right, is that both Nancy and Margaret both have this ability to see things like Playboy, right, of where their fathers get Playboy, and they've seen these magazines. And, right, there was a point in time in which media like that is about the female body and not even just sexualizing it necessarily, but just like wanting to expose women in that way, right, is way more readily available now, right? And so this progression becomes younger and younger and younger, right? Yeah, yeah. It's also an uncomfortable book to me, I think, for two reasons, right? One of them is because I am a young male teacher, right? And these are conversations and things that I understand happen in the classroom. And even though I am teaching, at an older age where hopefully these conversations don't happen, right, or don't have to happen, right, I do still understand that these are conversations that happen, right? Because I've had to deal with some of these conversations when I was working at camp, right, of where I had to talk to girls about their periods or talk to them about birth, right? I think there's one topic, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but eventually, short of the story is that these girls were very scared because they heard about this process in which the uterus could become dislodged during pregnancy and during birth. And I had to then walk them off of walk them back from that ledge, right? Simply because I was the only one that was willing to then have this conversation, to make sure that, a whole bunch of, I think they're 12 and 13-year-old girls weren't terrified of their own bodies going home from camp, right? And that's one of those things, right, of where I think part of being really legitimately feminist or feminist adjacent, right? I still find it very hard to consider and call myself a feminist because these are experiences that I cannot internalize in a way, right? I will never have these same experiences, and therefore it's very hard for me to internalize them. But being feminist or feminist adjacent, right? One of those things is you have to work very, very hard for young women, especially as they are growing and developing and learning their own bodies, is for them not to be afraid of their own bodies, which is it's a difficult line to walk down, right? Especially right in that situation or in that setting in which you have, where obviously it would be my preferred thing to do would be to defer to someone who's female presenting, to then have these conversations. But if those people are also not comfortable with themselves and comfortable with their bodies, then right, something still has to happen, right? But yeah, right. Being young and growing up is terrifying, right? I'm still at the point where my brain is fully developed, right? So I guess technically I still got a year and a half until I can look down on them. But yeah. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. The other portion of the story, right, involves the religious upbringing and these decisions about religion and whatnot, right? And it is, in one sense, it is very literal to say that this is just an argument about, this whole situation of where this is a young girl who is now also fighting with these issues, right? Of where that's part of growing up, right? Of what you actually believe in. And she eventually settles on her own personal relationship that she has already established with her God, right? Of where she doesn't necessarily need to be present in temple or be present, I think it's a Presbyterian church that she goes to, or at the Catholic church that she's in very briefly, right? she eventually learns to become comfortable with her own personal relationship, her inner monologue with her God, right? On one hand, right, that's just one thing. On the other hand, right, you could absolutely just take this as a metaphor or an allegory for the large situation at hand, right? Of where this is about Margaret learning to accept herself for who she is and not necessarily needing to follow the prescribed path of anyone else, right? Because it is right. It's one of those things of going back to this conversations I've had with both staff and campers at camp, conversations that have come up or that they want to talk to me about, of what does it really mean to grow up and experience these things, right? And you can't, I'm very much someone that's on the board of, here is descriptions, anecdotes, and there's descriptions and of what's happening, and you know, here's what you can expect, right? But you can't be one to directly tell them, here's exactly what's going to happen, here's this, right? Because that's one of those things to me that's very important about growing up, is that you have to be able to willingly discover yourself, both, right, in a mental and spiritual way, but also in a physical way, right? You have to be willing to learn yourself and learn your body and what your body wants and needs, right? And you know, what does it mean to be you, right? You know, the Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass quote keeps coming up in the past couple months. I don't remember exactly what the wording of it is, but you know, it's the question of what does it mean to be you, right? And Alice, I think, attempts to give some answer of relationships and, you know, who she is through that route, right? And that's not a good enough answer, because really, if you need to be able to figure out how do you describe yourself or what it means to actually be you in all of this, right? Because it's a big world, right? But yeah, that's it. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, by Judy Blume. Very fun book, an uncomfortable book in a lot of ways for me, but it's because, you know, I'm me, right? That's that.